so the more people learn about it, the more able they are, because sometimes when I'm talking to a communist or I'm talking to a talk show host, I'm really not talking to them, I'm talking to the people listening.
Sure.
Because if you convince one person, that's good. But if you convince 5, 10, 20, 100 people, thousands, millions, or millions of people, that's even better. That's why I went to talk radio. I was trying to reach people that weren't looking for this information. And years later, here and there, I bump into people, and they're anti-communist activists, and they attribute that to me, which that's the best compliment you could get. But we're really, really behind.
Well, back when I was a communist, okay, one of the things we were told is don't get into a public debate with a conservative or whatever we were called back then, a right-winger, because the audience will side with them. You know, because back in those days, in the 70s, the communists were afraid that people would be knowledgeable out there and would start refuting what they were saying. They don't have to be as scared of that now because most people don't know how to refute the stuff.
Yeah, now they don't have to worry about that.
Right.
And listen, there's something else here. I attended the memorial service for Gus Hall. Gus Hall is the leader of the American Communist Party. And when he died, I was at the memorial service, and condolences were sent from various parties around the world. And it's interesting to see condolences were sent from the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. This is the year 2000.
Yeah.
So, to the communists, in their writing in 1993 and 94, in their publications, they talked about the meetings of all the groups in Russia, the main one, the controlling one, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. That was in 93 and 94. Then in 2000 again, they referred to the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in the present tense at this point, at this time. And in this brochure for Gus Hall's memorial service, there's an award letter, U.S., I don't know what the United States Steelworkers of America, AFL-CIO. There's an award thing from him, like looks like a graduation certificate. He was one of the organizers of the United States Steelworkers. The Automobile Workers Union was controlled by communists, the steelworkers, most of the major unions. So Gus Hall was probably the second most powerful man in America. The first one I'd say was the president because he could launch nuclear weapons.
Right.
But Gus Hall had the ability to have race riots in every city. He was able to have the dock worker strike, particularly on the West Coast. He was able to have teacher strikes because most of the unions are very far to the left. Some of them are openly communist, but they all belong to national and international union groupings, which are all communist. The communists have a lot more influence than their numbers. So we could have, if you have 20,000 Tea Party members, and the Communist Party, let's say, has 20,000 members, the 20,000 Communist Party members are influencing tens of millions of people because they get into jobs where they multiply their effort because of the jobs they have. It's their life. The only thing I guess you could compare to it, other than me and you, Tony, and a few other people here and there, are maybe the Christian missionaries who go all over the world to spread the good word. The communists are like that, but their religion is Marx, it's the devil, it's communism, and it's hatred. Because everybody knows America is the strongest country in the world. Therefore, to have world government, whether it's communist or the socialist form, which is basically the same thing, you have to weaken America. And I was at communist meetings where they talked about America needs 3, 4, 5 more Vietnams. And I was at an event at the Stephen Wise Free Synagogue on West 68th Street or Central Park. It was the 25th anniversary celebration of the communist victory in Vietnam. They actually celebrate a victory against America in a synagogue. And one of the guys there was Jack Odell, a key advisor to Martin Luther King. John Kerry's group was there, Vietnam Veterans Against the War. And by the way, during the Vietnam War, I was at the protest with my pro-American side. And the communists always had the communist flag. That was the leadership of these protests. And you always saw banners from Vietnam Veterans Against the War. That's John Kerry's group.
Yeah.
So we get people that openly, actively work with and for communists, and they are in our government. We get a CIA director who voted for the communist guy in his youth. Yeah. And now somebody is saying something like that about Comey. I'm not too sure about that, but I just heard that today. This country has never, I said this 30 years ago on the radio, This country has never been in the danger we're in now. You look at the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, World War I, World War II. We've never been in the danger we're in now, and I said that 30 years ago, and it's far worse now.
Jimmy, in World War II, we knew we were in a fight. You know what I mean? There were bombs flying all over the place. We knew we were fighting. This thing, we don't even know we're in a battle.
We had the arsenal of democracy. Right. We had a war now. We'd have to deal with the enemy to get some of the ammunition and stuff.
That's true, unfortunately.
We got totally outsmarted. These conservatives who say they won the Cold War, and I understand you want to believe that, but that's an old communist trick. Lenin is quoted as saying, tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah. This
way, the old-time anti-communists, they get older, they retire, they feel like they're going to retire in victory, and eventually they go on and they pass. There was nothing left behind them. And now you got generations, even in Eastern Europe, who know nothing about communism.
Yeah.
The Jewish people were smart. They made sure everybody knew about Hitler. They're never going to let that die. And the communists, too, because that's always portrayed as the right wing and fascism. And anybody who opposes communism, they say is fascist.
Right.
But the fact that the Jews were smart enough to keep that alive without the Nazis, and our side gave up.
Yeah.
Except for a handful of us here and there. And we can't do that because if America falls, the whole world falls. I always said America is like the big pole in the tent. A lot of young people don't know that the circuses used to be under tents. Once the big pole falls, everything collapses. This was always, to the KGB, America was always enemy number one. And how strange, what a coincidence.
Yeah.
To the radical Muslims, we're the big Satan. Israel's the little Satan.
Yeah, Jimmy, we've always had a disadvantage here. We're talking about the Tea Party. You were talking about the Tea Party organizing and what we have to do. But the communists have always had the backing of a government that funded them. The problem with the Tea Party, we don't even have a political party that backs us and funds us. So for us to get organized and start pulling in the same direction is a lot tougher than it is for thousands of these Marxist groups to get pulling in the same direction because there's so many funding mechanisms that all trace back either to China or Cuba or Russia, historically. And even if they aren't getting that kind of funding today, they were organized by that kind of funding 30 years ago, and they're up and running. They know what their game is.
And they're getting union funds.
Right, that's
so
right.
A lot of these radical unions like the idea that Trump is going to have this rebuilding infrastructure because the communists see it as it's going to be a windfall for them.
Yep.
Because most people's union dues, part of it goes toward the union political activity. Mm-hmm. And most of the workers, veterans, they don't know that their union is supporting the enemy. We got guys here who fought in different wars, and they're working in construction unions or the hospital workers union. In New York, the hospital workers 1199 union, this is a hospital union.
Yeah.
You take care of sick people in hospitals, and that money goes and supports communism.
Yeah.
So you're paying for people who would kill us. I mean, it's incredible. And why would you listen to talk radio? I meet people who read the conservative publications. They read National Review religiously. They listen to talk radio. They know nothing about communism. What are these guys on the radio doing? Now, I'm not accusing the conservatives of collaborating with the communists or conspiring, but the communist conspiracy is easier to say than the conservative conspiracy because most of what the communists do and did, they write about. And I read it. I learned what I learned from the communists. I learned very little from any anti-communist publication. So the communists are pretty open about what they're doing. It's the conservatives who are keeping it quiet. Sean Hannity had a guest on his show the other day. I forget the name. Something like Amir Baraklavar or something like that. And he wrote a book. He was in Iran during the Iranian Revolution when the radicals took over. And the book, the title is Comrade Ayatollah. Now from Comrade, you get a little inkling here. Comrade, that's usually communist. But the subtitle was something about how the KGB helped the mullahs, I forget the exact title. And yet, when the guy was being interviewed by Hannity on the radio show, the guy mentioned, when Hannity asked the guy, the author, how long did it take for the radical mullahs to take over once the Shah was thrown out? And the author told him about 20, 25 years. And then the author says, the radical mullahs were trained by the KGB. Now, instead of saying, and start asking about that, Hannity acted like he didn't hear it. And that was the end. And then that night, when the guy was on Hannity's TV show, that never came up, and Hannity rushed the guy through the interview. Mm-hmm. And one of the people that I know that heard it says he thought Hannity disrespected him. I didn't I didn't judge it that way. But how could he, a major talk show guy, have a guy on his show that's bringing out a story that the masses could hear? Because once you realize the communist involvement with radical Islam, then it should change everything. But the problem for Hannity and other talk show conservatives, they've been pushing the idea we won the Cold War, there's no more threat, and then there's other people that say Putin is a natural ally against Muslim terror. They would be discredited now because Hannity and everybody else knows on talk radio that I've been talking about this for 30 years. I actually talked before there was Muslim terrorism. I was warning that's what's coming because I understand the strategies of Antonio Gramsci, and I know, Tony, you're an expert on that. Let me briefly go over Gramsci. The basic Marxist theory is you go from slavery to feudalism, then from that you go to capitalism, different stages of capitalism, then you go to socialism and communism. And you get the rich, you get the poor to attack the rich, you get the farm workers to attack the farm owner, you get the tenants to attack the landlord. Marx said no, Gramsci was in Italy. He said no, in Italy that wouldn't work because there's something that binds the very rich to the middle to the very poor. The one common thing between them all is they're all Catholic. Therefore, you have to first penetrate the church.